I don't even think you necessarily need to know me. I think if you were listening to the list, and if you heard what I want out of my stories and who some of my favorite heroes are, I think this will come as a surprise to
Oh,
very few of you, if not, come as a surprise to nobody. But my number one is Mark Waid and Alex Ross, Kingdom Come.
ah,
Um,
Nice choice.
that to me, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer because I think it's the best comic story. That's not what this list was about for me, because I think there are a lot of things to consider. But for me, Kingdom Come just really, it just tells such a great story. I like that we get to see where all the, in this else world, we get to see where all the different heroes have gone. We get to see what it would take to dislodge Superman as the hero of the world. And it makes sense in a way, and there's an element here that I appreciate, that Superman's downfall is not caused by brainwashing or finally getting sick of everything. It's a misguided vision of justice, and so sure enough, there on the other side of the coin is Batman. He's on the other end of the battlefield, and they both sides rally their forces to them, and I like I like the way the story is told. We talked about how art doesn't always have to be super realistic. That's not always the best way to tell a story. Sometimes you want to go for minimalistic, you want to go for suggestive, you want to go for exaggerated. One of the things I said I really enjoy about Ms. Marvel is the way that she looks so goofy sometimes when she's embiggened. So but here it works. We see a man striding among giants recruited by the Spectre. We get to see these different heroes, some of whom who've tapped out and aren't interested in coming back, such as Aquaman, such as Green Lantern. um Man, it's heartbreaking what happened to Martian Manhunter. He was so desperate to understand and embrace humanity that in a moment that I think it's described as this terrible moment. He opens his mind to the world, and it just shatters him. But he still manages to come back and help Bruce one last time. All the stuff with Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. Again, I think I just excuse me. I just love everything about Kingdom Come, and uh, yeah, I can't say enough good things about the story. So like I said, I don't think that's necessarily a surprise. I think Kingdom Come tops a lot of people's lists, but for me that was like an easy. Some of the other ones shift around in the order, but for me it was an easy Mark Waid, Alex Ross, Kingdom Come at number one.
do you think that'll ever change, Chris? Because I don't think my top number one's ever going to change, but because it's your number one story. You think that's always going to be there? You think they'll? I mean, is there something you've read in the past that you think that could someday supplant it, or what? Just I'm intrigued by the whole idea of a number one story. It's I was saying to James before we started earlier, we've between the three of us, we must have read hundreds of thousands of comic book stories, and to pick one, but I mean, you're so definitive about that, and I'm going to be pretty definitive about mine too. But I also wonder, how long. I mean, how long that would last, and with the way comics are being written today, I don't think anything new is going to take the place of our number ones. But there's something. I might read something in that Sandman collection that might. I doubt it, but might not my number one off the top tier. But just what do you think? Anything that could happen that could bring it a change?
I think uh, maybe, uh, but it's tough because it's pretty deeply ingrained in my history as a comic reader. It has a special place there, sort of like Batman the Animated Series. If I watched it, had a virgin viewing of it now, maybe I feel differently about it. But it holds up after all this time, but is also a very entangled with my past, my growing up, my love of the hobby, and so I feel the same way about Kingdom Come. I
That's
think.
great.
So it's hard
That's
for me to envision a moment in which the only way I think, and this is going to sound a little bit off, but the only way I see it being a drop from grace, fall from grace, is I think if I found out something about Mark Waid or Alex Ross that personally uh, made me unhappy with them, not just as artists but as people. I've
oh
had that happen before, where I like an actor or I like a writer, or since Scott Card. Um, is a great example. I love Ender's Game, but then I discovered that Orson Scott Card is a homophobe. And
Ah,
there's some other stuff there too that I'm just like, okay, well, I still like Ender's Game, but yeah, that is my understanding and my appreciation for the book is now colored by that knowledge, and whether I like it or not, drops it down my list. So that's, I think, the only thing that probably is likely to dislodge Kingdom Come, honestly.
my favorite horror film is Rosemary's Baby, and we know who directed that movie, right?
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes
so
you have to
it can
separate.
be
Yeah.
tough. I ran into this too with David Tyree, that as much as I love that helmet catch, to find out that he later on said, "Well, I would give it back if gay people could never get married." That
Oh, I
you
never
know,
heard that. Really? He said that?
yeah, yeah,
Well, he's
that
not in the
moment
league
is forever
anymore.
tainted for me. So
Oh, damn. Well, maybe that football hit him too hard in the head.
he's like, that catch meant everything to me, and I would give it back if gays could not get married. And when I learned that,
What
you
a
know,
dope.
it just broke my heart, and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm still, that run and that Super Bowl win, it's still magic for me, but now it's forever tainted by that, and so I think it would take, honestly, as grim as that sounds, I think it would take learning something like that to really shake Kingdom Come from the top of my list.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, Kingdom comes as a great pick. I mean, um, it's they wrote the characters in, they updated them, but still kept them very pure to their essential arcs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to, I guess, argue. You know, it's hard to like. Those are the quintessential characters that are depicted in there. I mean, they're older and they've made different choices, and some things didn't go right, but they are still the characters. I guess all the universal aspects of them are still there. So it's I guess it's hard to argue with Kingdom Come. It almost made my top 10 too. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, I have a hardcover autograph by Alex Ross.
Oh,
James, I think you remember
that
this,
sounds
right?
beautiful.
Yeah, I won that. I won 4 tickets to that signing at the Warner Brothers store in the.
all right, yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that?
Oh,
Did,
nice.
did
yeah.
you?
That's
You didn't
amazing.
come, right? Did you
No,
come?
I went there. I
Oh,
actually I didn't buy. He actually was kind enough. He had postcards. If you just sat away on the line, he signed like a postcard for me of the print he was selling.
but did you come with Richie and I the night we went?
I don't know.
No, no, I don't think so. It was me, Richie, Steve, and I can't think of his name now. Ray. I think it
Oh,
was Ray.
okay.
Yeah, and yeah. So Chris, I've got a hardcover. It's one of my prized possessions.
Damn straight. Very nice, very
Yeah,
nice. Yeah.
I
So
love
that's my
that
number
book.
one. Yeah.
All right.
Great choice.
All right, Joe. You're number one.
Well, my number one is by the same team, Miller and Mazzucchelli. It's a little bit, it's Daredevil, Born Again, issues 226 to 233. The Kingpin has learned, Daredevil's secret identity, and he proceeds to deconstruct his life, and he does it. He takes everything away from him. He takes his practice away from his friends, everything. I mean, Daredevil literally winds up sleeping in the streets, and the only thing that keeps Matt going is what he inherited from his father, his ability to fight on. And I'm not a big fan of deconstruction stories. Although I do like Watchmen, that's in my top 20 if we're going to do a top 20. But this is a personal. This is not an epic um, like Watchmen. This is a personal story of a man having his life falling apart, and it's a man having his life falling apart, not a superhero, really. Yeah, you really see him in costume until the very end, and you just get this picture of these two great creators of how this man's life is just going down the toilet, spinning down the toilet. And if it wasn't for his passion to fight on, he wouldn't be able to rise up from it. He has help at the end from the Avengers by all people. They come in, and Captain America also, who takes down the Kingpin's federal agent. I forget the guy's name. He's got a flag on his face, so he's probably some right-wing lunatic. But it's and what's interesting about this story is even though Daredevil loses everything, and the reason why he loses it, Cameron Page is down south somewhere in South America, and she sells off his identity for another hit, and she's brought into the story at the end, and he forgives her, and and he's wrestling with his Catholic guilt obviously through this. We also meet his mother. We think it's his mother. We discussed this, right, James? That nun is his
Yes.
mother, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Well, in the Kevin Smith Guardian Devil, I think it pretty much is. He pretty much confirms this is his
he
mother.
confirms. Yes,
Yeah.
and so he's either through his faith and the remembrance of his father and what his father gave him, he's able to overcome this terrible personal tragedy and forgive the one person that basically brought it on, and they go off hand in hand to protect and live in the neighborhood where he grew up, Hell's Kitchen, and they protect they fight for the people that can't fight for themselves. It's hard to say this again because we're talking about this before, Chris. If it would change, I don't think this will change for me, and I think I'm going to go one step further and say I think this is not only the best Marvel story ever, comic book story ever written, but at least for all the comic book stories I've ever written. Yeah, I wish, don't I? I've ever read. I think this is the best comic book story of all
Wow.
time. I really do.
That is a
I
hell of a
love this
claim,
story.
man.
Yeah, well, this is just I reread it at least 2 or 3 times a year, and I just read it to prepare for this last week, and it still holds up. It's 30 years later, whatever it is, and it still wows me every time. That's my
That's a
number
great
one.
choice, Joe.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, that was. I
I'm gonna
was.
have to read it now. I have no choice. I have to read it now.
You have to read this. You have to.
Yeah, it's a great choice. It was again, it was battling for my top 10 as well. But it's an amazing book. So I can't agree more with that choice for top one pick. Um, all right. So my the top of my list is going back to the Swamp Thing run with Alan Moore, and it's Swamp Thing issue number 50,
Ah,
which is the culmination of I guess the Dark Saga. Swamp Thing has been on since Alan Moore took over the book and introduced the character of John Constantine, and it kind of it's the culmination of Swamp Thing has been John Constantine been running him around the world, teaching him and showing him all these dark, evil stuff that's been going on, and exposing him to the horrors of the world. And now this great ancient evil has been awoken, and that has been in a sleep and imprisoned since the dawn of time, and now it has risen. And Swamp Thing once again goes into the afterworld, and he is greeted by the Spectre, Phantom Stranger, the Demon, um, and they amass the forces of heaven and hell to fight this monster. And meanwhile, on Earth, John Constantine assembles the first incarnation of Justice League, which will be later Justice League Dark in the
mhm.
future. Zantana, Zatara, Doctor Occult, um, Cain and Abel even make an appearance
Oh,
in this
that's
book.
right. House of Mystery.
And Doctor Fate shows up in the afterworld to support Swamp Thing in his campaign, and this ancient evil just basically rises up and is basically ripping through the forces of heaven with their angels, and it rips through Etrican, and it rips through the Spectre, and it rips through Doctor Fate, and it keeps as it absorbs these characters into him. It keeps wanting to know what evil is, and the Spectre teaches this dark force that evil is vengeance,
Mm.
and Etrican teaches it that it's that evil is contempt, and Doctor Fate, I think, teaches it that evil is also vengeful, and so he keeps not evil doesn't know what it is, and nobody's giving it the answer. And then Swamp Thing, having gone on this long journey, walks into it. He's not absorbed in it. He doesn't fight it, and the thing says, "What is evil?" And Swamp is like, "I'm not sure what evil is, but I think what evil is that when it's I think overcome and defeated, it becomes the soil in which virtue can grow out of." And the
Mm.
evil's like, I had not thought of that. And then it says, you may pass. And it basically lets Swamp Thing out. Um, and this dark force basically rises up into the heavens to do, I guess, whatever battle with heaven. And it's drawn that two hands are basically encountering each other. There's a golden shining hand representing heaven, and the dark hand representing this dark force of hell. And the two of them basically merge together and form a yin and yang. And that's how the story ends, where the light and darkness become the opposites of each other. And the realms of hell are like, I guess, reordered, and the dark Justice League Dark, they suffered many casualties, and John Constantine has lent his support to help Swamp Thing in the afterlife. But Zatara, Zatanna's father, is killed during this whole thing, so she is angry at John, and Swamp Thing basically goes back to the forest. So it's like it's this this whole like more philosophical, metaphysical battle of what is good and evil. So it's hard to choose from my list what my number one is, but I thought that story is like the highlight of the Alan Moore run of Swamp Thing, so that's why I
And
chose that.
that's the level Alan Moore worked on. Now I don't know about him. I think he's on an island somewhere with Frank Miller, and they're probably just drooling. But yeah, that was him at his height, definitely. I got to go back and read that now. How many issues lead up to that issue, James?
I think he wrote it. Let me see. I wrote the issue. That was issue 50, and he
Right.
started on issue 19.
19. Wow. Yeah, that's right. 1920 is the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to digging into Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I was never really a fan. I didn't really know anything about Swamp Thing, but a friend of mine, a guy I really, really respect and enjoy here in St. Louis, his name is Tony, loves Swamp Thing. James, I know you love Swamp Thing. We've talked about it a couple of times, and he showed up in my reading occasionally, but especially lately as I've been like, I guess I should read some of the newer stuff. So I've been reading New 52 and everything, and he shows up so frequently. I have a proclivity for something like Justice League Dark. I love the idea. I don't love how it's being executed right now, but I love the idea of Justice League Dark. And the animated flick was pretty good, the first one.
Mm.
But I'm looking forward to reading more Swamp Thing because I now know a bunch of people who really like Swamp Thing, and I'm intrigued. So I'm looking forward to giving it a read.
The Justice League Dark right now is been consigned to as a backup feature to the current Justice League book. Well, when I pick it up, Justice League, I immediately turn to Justice League Dark in the back because the Justice League book story is being written by Bendis, and it's not even worth mentioning.
Yeah.
But it just seems that the Justice League Dark, the whole concept, just brings out the best in writers. It's
Yeah. I mean, I love the ideas. I don't love how they're all necessarily being executed, but I like the characters, and I think there are a lot of directions they can go with them. So but I've never just read Swamp Thing, so I think it's time I rectify that.
yeah.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. I highly recommend. I mean, listen, the first two, like if you go for the Hoopla app, they have the volume 1 and volume 2 of the Omnibus, which the volume 1 is great. It's the original Bernie Wrightstein, Len Wein stories, which are amazing, I think. And even the second volume has some good stuff. The third volume, I'm a Swamp Thing fan. It was tough. It was the first time they did like I guess a year or two long arc, and I just didn't enjoy it. But after that arc, when they move from, I guess volume 3 was the start of the saga of Swamp Thing, and when you hit the Alan Moore stuff is, I would say the Swamp Thing run not only changed the character of Swamp Thing, obviously, but I think it influenced a lot of the writing that came after it for other heroes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
His like reinterpretation of Swamp Thing's origin is again, it changes it, puts it on its head, and I think it's like one of the better reinventions of a character's origin.
It's very simple because it's basically a coin flip, but it's so brilliant when you think about it.
Yeah. So, and I think the character is pretty much like, even though they've rebooted him many times, it's always evolves into that Alan Moore origin at some point where, again, I don't want to ruin it, Chris. I mean,
we've ruined a lot of stuff, right?
right.
You got to put that spoiler alert at the beginning of this episode.
We're gonna have to put it in the notes. Hey, lots of teasers. If you hear the name of a story that you don't want spoiled, fast forward.
Yeah.